The international break is finally over. FPL and football is back this weekend, and in today's video we're going to be running through my team selection and of course giving you all the key data you need to make the best decisions ahead of game week 12. Now, before we dive into today's video, of course, we are going to run through my game week 11 points. We're not going to spend too long on that, as obviously it was ages ago. But before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are now trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the season. And it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. So, yeah, hit that subscribe button. Right, let's start off with game week 11. And as you can see, another decent week for me. Obviously, Cunha and Visser being the kind of big boys that definitely helped me out this game week. Haaland captain, it didn't quite work out. Obviously, Salah was the better option in the end. I was kind of leaning more towards Haaland. I thought he would have done a lot better in game week 11. Unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. He lost 2 bonus points and, of course, picked up a yellow card right at the end. So that is a little bit of a blow. I think he was on like an 8-pointer or something like that. So it would have been a pretty decent return from my captain. But in the end, he did just finish on 5. So not the best, especially when we've got Mohamed Salah there with 14 points. However, though, what I want to point out to you guys is my rank over the past few weeks. We've gone from 5 million in game week 7 all the way now just outside the top million. We've had some absolutely incredible weeks, and what I wanted to highlight here was just basically the fact, if you've not had the best start to the season, do not worry. You can very easily pull it round in a couple good game weeks. If you get obviously captaincy right, you pick the right players and stuff like that, you can get your season back on track, and very similar to me, have, you know, pretty good kind of setup going into this busy Christmas period. There's 7 game weeks just in December alone. A lot can happen in those weeks. A lot can change in terms of ranks, so don't be too disheartened if you've not had the best start to this season. I didn't, and I've managed to pull it round, and we're in a pretty good position going into the busy festive period. Now let's move on. Let's of course take a look at the betting data from Rob T FPL. Please make sure you're going and following this guy over on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. Now, interestingly, with Blue Sky, we have our own account as well. I'll flash that up on the screen right now. Go and check me out on there. Go and drop us a follow as well, as I will be posting a lot of the stuff that I post on Twitter over on Blue Sky as well. But let's take a look at the betting data for this weekend, and what we can see and what I kind of envision happening this weekend is a lot of goals. As we can see, there's a lot of teams with 2+ goals expected from the betting markets as well. Even the Bournemouth and Fulham games, it does look like there is going to be plenty of goals going round as well. A little bit better in terms of clean sheet percentages across this week as well. I think prior to this week, there was only kind of 2 standout teams. This week, we've obviously got Liverpool and Arsenal as the 2 standouts, but everybody else is kind of, you know, middling around that 32 to 36%. So there might be potentially a steadily increase of clean sheets. However, I am expecting from a lot of the home teams, as we can see here, plenty of goals going in. Obviously, Manchester City being the 2nd highest as well is quite surprising, but with the defensive injuries that Spurs have got, and I think the poor start that they've had, you know, defensively again this season, it could be one of those games where maybe holding on to Erling Haaland might not be the worst idea in the world. Like I said, he's got a pretty decent record against Spurs as well. City are at home. They do have decent projected goal numbers here. There's the potential for KDB to be back as well, and Haaland had a pretty decent international break as well, scoring a hat-trick over the weekend. So it's not like he's in bad form. The data as well for Manchester City overall has still been pretty decent. They're top currently of the Premier League for expected goals, and Haaland, his actual data has been pretty phenomenal. He's just not really put any chances away. So we will have a little bit more of a bigger discussion around whether or not it is time to sell off Erling Haaland, but looking at these numbers, it could be a very, very decent week for him. Obviously, the man on the thumbnail, Alexander Isak here as well. Decent projected goals for Newcastle, and I think for me, if I was looking to replace Haaland, or if I was going without him on a wild card, Isak would be my #1 choice, to be honest. His record against West Ham as well is phenomenal. I think it's 6 attacking returns in 2 games against the Hammers, obviously coming into this with 4 in 4 as well, so really, really good form at the moment for him. Good fixtures coming up for Newcastle, bar Liverpool in game week 14. But outside of that, a decent run. A player that does take penalties, sees decent minutes, I think could be an absolutely stellar pickup. Let's move on to the 11ify data for the upcoming game week. Starting off first with projected clean sheets over the next few weeks. Now, I've had a few questions on this in the comment section, so I thought I would address it. A lot of people asking about Arsenal and saying, you know, it's ridiculous that they're that high. Obviously, they've not been that good a defence so far this season, or not to the same levels they were last season, and that's true. Obviously, they've not kept as many clean sheets, but they're still one of the best teams for XG conceded. They've got a really nice fixture run coming up as well, and it's not like all of a sudden they've become a bad defence. I think some of the games, you have to look at game state. There's been quite a few games where Arsenal have received red cards. Against Southampton as well, very low XG conceded, and a shot just went in. It's unfortunate stuff, and I think, I'm back in the 11ify data here. I think over the next few weeks, it could be quite profitable having an Arsenal defender within your side. They are obviously, as you can see here, fancied the most for clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks as well. So for me personally, I think could be a great investment, especially if you're on a wild card. A Raya or a Gabriel could be decent investments. Obviously, Liverpool and Manchester City, again, I think with just the nature and the historical data that 11ify uses to obviously build these projections as well as data from this season, again, it's no real surprise, is it? I know the fixtures do get a little bit more difficult for Liverpool, but Konate could also be a very solid shout. They currently sat top for XG conceded as well, the best defence in the league within that metric. Chelsea are a team I'm definitely looking at in terms of defensive players to potentially go and pick up. They've got an absolutely stellar run where I believe you could hold a cheap 4.5 million defender, let's say for example a Levi Colwell, all the way up until game week 29 for me personally. It's an absolutely stellar run. Obviously Newcastle in here as well, so Hall could be a decent shout. I know people are looking at Digne from Aston Villa. Konsa's also still a decent shout at 4.4. Decent fixtures as well coming up for Bournemouth, so maybe somebody like a Kirkez could also be a potential shout as well. Let's move on. Let's take a look at the projected goal data from 11ify. Again, it is those same teams towards the top end of this table. Manchester City, interestingly, top on the 11ify model. Obviously, we saw with the betting data, second against Spurs as well. So maybe selling off Erling Haaland might not be the wisest idea ahead of game week 12. A kind of disrupted backline for Spurs as well. Still seeing pretty decent, pretty woeful kind of defensive record from them. And the fact that the betting market and 11ify's kind of data as well is also suggesting that there's going to be some goals in this game for Manchester City. Might be worth holding on to Erling Haaland. As we can see, the next few teams as well, Saka for Arsenal, Salah for Liverpool, and of course Palmer for Chelsea, all definitely worth, you know, potential players to be looking to bring in over the next few weeks with decent projected goal numbers as well. I spoke about Alexander Isak potentially being a decent alternative if you're looking to go without Erling Haaland. I said the fixtures were decent, and as you can see here, some great projected goals coming up. One of the other teams I did want to pick out was, of course, Nottingham Forest. I know a lot of people are looking at Chris Wood, still a lot of people bringing him in, but the fixtures, they fall off a cliff for Nottingham Forest. And I do think there are going to be some heavy defeats across that period as well. They were 16th in terms of the clean sheet one, so I'm not going to be looking at any of their defenders. And in terms of their attackers as well, I think bar the Ipswich game in game week 13, probably don't really want to be holding any of them. So maybe if you've got Chris Wood, bench him this week, play him for the Ipswich game, then look to sell him. That will probably be my kind of advice on that one. However, outside of that, I would not be looking at any Forest players defensively or from an attacking standpoint either. Definitely one of those teams that we kind of want to be shifting away from now rather than looking to invest in. So maybe if you're on a wild card, maybe you've got a couple Forest players in there, maybe somebody like a Chris Wood or an Aina, it might potentially be worth reconsidering with some difficult fixtures. And as we can see from the 11ify data as well, some difficult kind of projected goal numbers and projected clean sheet numbers over the next few weeks. Let's move on. Let's take a look at the discussion around whether or not it's worth keeping Erling Haaland. So what I've got here is Liverpool's, Chelsea's and Manchester City's fixtures for the next few game weeks, all the way up until game week 19. And realistically, I spoke about this with Jake in yesterday's stream, and we said, you know, realistically, where are you going to be captaining Erling Haaland across these next few game weeks? And we were looking at it, and obviously I've not included the Arsenal ones on here, but game week 18, Arsenal have also got a fantastic fixture. I think it's Ipswich. So even the 18 against Everton, I don't think you're probably going to be captaining Haaland. You probably are going to be looking at a Salah or potentially a Cole Palmer as well with Fulham at home. I just don't see you go for Erling Haaland in those weeks. Palace in 15 is probably the week you would like to own Erling Haaland for and would be captaining him. Outside of that, though, I don't think you're captaining Erling Haaland in any of these weeks. I really, really don't. And I don't think he becomes a viable captaincy option unless it's maybe game week 15 and, you know, the other players aren't quite delivering. But as we can see here, you know, Salah's got Everton away. Arsenal have got a pretty decent fixture that week as well. So it's not like it's an absolute give me for Erling Haaland either. So I definitely think there is scope to go without Erling Haaland, purely down to the fact that you are paying a premium price for him this season. And if you're not giving him the armband, I don't know whether or not he's going to be worth investing into. It seems like City are struggling with some of their injuries to Rodri, to KDB. There's an overall, I would say, lack of clinicality within the side as well. And just a little bit like they're not playing to Haaland's strengths at times. So I do feel like this Manchester City side are going through a little bit of a groove at the moment, and they need to get themselves back into kind of the spirit, the way that City usually play. And if you look at 13 and 14 as well for their fixtures, it's two of the best teams for XG conceded so far this season. Liverpool, who are top, away at Anfield. I don't see Erling Haaland scoring in that one. And then Forest at home. Again, a game where I feel Forest will be quite astute and set up very, very defensively. Palace away, I think, is a decent fixture. Manchester United, again, we don't really know what they're going to be like under their new management. By that point, they could be an absolutely stellar side, set up exceptionally well defensively. They nullify Erling Haaland. And then Villa away. Go in there is not going to be an easy thing. I think Villa won actually there at home against Manchester City last season, or it might have been against Arsenal, but they still gave City a really, really good game. So there is definitely scope to go without Erling Haaland. The only problem is, of course, is his ownership. It's absolutely ridiculous, and going against him as somebody who did at the start of the season can be a fearful thing and something that could potentially put you a little bit on the back burner and maybe puts you in a really, really difficult position. But I think there is the scope to go with Palmer, Saka and Salah in midfield and build a pretty strong team around that rather than use Erling Haaland. But let me know what you think of this one down in the comments section. Now, before we head into my team selection ahead of Game Week 12, let's, of course, take a look at the predicted points and obviously talk about whether or not captaincy is going to kind of sway away from Mohamed Salah, because I do feel like he is the best option. Looking at the predicted points, it does have Mohamed Salah top. I know that is the case on FPL Review as well, and I believe Fantasy Football Fix. So all the kind of projected points models are suggesting Mohamed Salah is going to be the best. I think Southampton as well have conceded the most goals down the right-hand side or from right wingers so far this season out of all players. Saka had an absolute blinder against them, and Buemo on the right-hand side also had a pretty stellar game against the Saints as well. So it does bode quite well for Mohamed Salah. Obviously, Erling Haaland is fancied, and I do feel that might be backed up by the betting data and, of course, the projected goal data we saw from 11FI against this Spurs side with a home fixture as well. So maybe this might not be the week to sell off Erling Haaland. I spoke about Alexander Isak and, of course, my love for him and his previous records against West Ham. He also features on this list and I think could be a decent replacement if you're on a wild card this week and looking to go without, of course, Erling Haaland as well. So for me personally, I think captaincy is between Mohamed Salah, Palmer and Haaland, and if I was to pick right now, I am just going to go with Mohamed Salah. I don't think there's any need to overthink it for me personally. They obviously can see quite a lot of goals. Ramsdale and Bednarek might also be out of this game as well. So for me personally, all this is kind of adding up. Southampton, again, one of the worst sides for XG conceded so far in the league. The fact that they've conceded the most goals from right wing positions this season as well. All of this adds up, and I think it is a pretty easy decision to go for Mohamed Salah captain. Let me know which way you're going with captaincy this game week, and let's move on to my team for Game Week 12. Wasting no time, let's dive into my team selection ahead of Game Week 12. Starting off with our goalkeeper. Of course, we do have a little bit of a decision on our hands. Do we want to play Fabianski or do we want to go for Raya? I'm going to use the betting data here and look at the clean sheet percentages and see the fact that Arsenal are, I think, second in terms of this. So I'm going to go with Raya. Obviously, the 11FI data as well is looking pretty decent over the next few weeks. And for me personally, I am just going to stick Raya in every single week. I know Fabianski did score exceptionally well in game week 11, but for me, I don't really like rotating goalkeepers. I'm paying the more premium price for Raya, so I'm just going to stick it out and hope that that Arsenal defence can kind of get themselves back to some sort of normality. In terms of the back three this week, I do feel it's pretty self-explanatory with, you know, Grieve still flagged and Aina away at Arsenal. So Mykolenko is in here, Aït-Nouri and Konza. Again, all fairly-ish decent clean sheet opportunities. I'm not actually expecting too much from Aït-Nouri this week. I think Fulham are one of the best or most underappreciated sides within the Premier League so far this season. So I do feel that could be a little bit of a difficult test for him, but hopefully maybe an attack in return. If they can get a result there as well, maybe a clean sheet, that would be absolutely stellar. I think the way that Brentford are set up this season is pretty much gun-ho. So again, I'm not really expecting too much out of Mykolenko. Konza, I am very, very hopeful for. Again, looking at the betting data, decent clean sheet percent opportunities for him. So I'm feeling pretty confident that him and Raya might be the ones to get us clean sheets this week. But watch it be the other way around and Aït-Nouri and, of course, Mykolenko pick up those. Let's head on into the midfield, and we do start to see some flags appear within the side. And Mbeumo, we're going to have to wait for an update from Thomas Frank regarding his fitness. In terms of his longevity within the side, he probably has only got around 2 more game weeks. Game week 14, I am looking to replace him with Jared Bowen, as West Ham go on a pretty decent run of 5 fixtures. Brentford's fixtures absolutely fall off a cliff. So for me personally, that is going to be a transfer I'm going to be looking to make in the next few weeks. Cole Palmer has been spotted in training, so I'm feeling pretty confident, again, that Maresca will give us a positive update regarding his fitness. He's a pretty open manager as well. Cole Palmer, I think, for me, over the next few weeks, is going to be an absolutely essential player within most people's sides as well. Like I said, decent fixtures all the way up until game week 29. And if you look at the break periods that some of these players have got, no European football for Cole Palmer, no Carabao Cup football as well for Chelsea. It means he gets a break in some of these midweek ones. Like I said, we've obviously got 7 game weeks crammed into December, sorry. We've also got 2 Champions League rounds, and of course we have another Carabao Cup round as well. So with Palmer not featuring within Chelsea's Europa Conference League side this season, and of course not in the Carabao Cup either, it means that he's going to be getting a break. So for me, he's probably going to be a pretty solid 90-minute man, and obviously has a decent captaincy appeal with obviously his big potential for hauls. Rodgers is going to be in there, again, decent fixture. Palace, I don't really have too much in terms of bench to kind of cover off that option. Mohamed Salah, we spoke about it in the last section. We looked at the predicted points. He is top of that list, so I'm feeling very, very confident that he can deliver the goods away at Southampton. Moving on to our front line, it is going to be Cunha, Visser, again, another flag player, and Erling Haaland. I'm very happy with Cunha. His baseline BPS is absolutely fantastic. So if he does anything, you know, picks up an assist, obviously gets a goal, it probably means that he is going to be on for 3 or at least potentially 2 bonus as well, with how well and kind of how much influence he has on the games for Wolves as a whole. Visser, if he is out and injured, I do have 2 potential replacements that we might go for. Of course, like I said, the fixtures do take a turn for Brentford around game week 14. So Mbeumo and Visser are 2 players we are going to have to think about potentially looking to remove from this squad. Danny Welbeck is, of course, one of them. João Pedro is the other one. And then we're looking at Evan Nielsen as well. All have kind of a little bit of minutes risks, I would say. So personally for me, I'd absolutely love Visser to be fit and available, so I don't have to make that decision and look at those 3 as potential options, because I'm not 100% convinced all of them play every single game over the busy Christmas period. And I think some of their minutes could be at risk as well. So I'm not 100% keen on any of those options as well. I'd like another 2 weeks to obviously evaluate, then look to move on my Brentford boys in game week 14. Obviously, we spoke about Erling Haaland, the fact that he has missed quite a lot of big opportunities in recent weeks, but I think this Tottenham game could be one that potentially could punish people who do sell him off. We saw with the betting data and the 11-5 data, decent projected goals going into this game week, so I feel he could go on an absolute madden over the next few weeks. In terms of how my team is going to look in the next couple of game weeks, obviously if Haaland continues to blank, we might potentially look to sell him off, but in terms of it, it probably is going to be a strategy to roll all the way up until maybe game week 14, I would say. And then that gives us the opportunity to use 3 free transfers. And Mbeumo, like I said, would probably come out for Bowen. So let's just do that. Visser would obviously come out. We'll have a look around game week 14, see who's got some decent fixtures there. And like I said, Aina is, of course, going to be coming out for Levi Colwell. How do I spell his name? Colwell, there we go. And that is probably what we would do with the side, to be honest. We could even bench Visser for that game week and just play a 4-back. But that is the way that I feel the squad is probably going to be starting to look over the next few game weeks. Like I said, I'm really big fan of the Chelsea fixtures. We saw with the 11FI data as well, decent projected clean sheet odds coming up. And I think Colwell at 4.5 million could be a great player to go and get. Play pretty much 90 minutes across that run. And then in terms of Jared Bowen and obviously him, I always end up with Jared Bowen in my side, but that is the run that they've got. Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton and Southampton. Then after that period, we probably will look to sell him around game week 19. See what other mid-price midfielders are popping up at that point, and then obviously look to maybe get Brian and Mbeumo back in here at some point when the fixtures do resume for, of course, Brentford. That was my game week 12 selection. Let me know what you think of it down in the comment section. If you've got any questions about your team, get them in the comments as we'll try to help you out as much as possible. There's probably going to be a deadline preview stream on Friday night, so if you are new around here, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button with bell notifications. And of course, I will be live from 8 o'clock on Saturday morning ahead of the FPL Game Week 12 deadline. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in Game Week 12.